I'm going to go vote, and Senator Romney, you can chair if you would while I'm gone, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this week marks the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, people around the world continue to remember. On June 4th, 1989, the government of China sent tanks into Tiananmen Square to violently suppress and forcibly disperse peaceful demonstrators. The Chinese government's infantry troops opened fire on students and on activists who were standing up for their fundamental freedoms. The horrible events resulted in the death and injury of hundreds of courageous Chinese citizens who were killed, tortured, imprisoned due to their participation in a peaceful democracy movement in Tiananmen Square. The Chinese authorities, to this day, continue to block and censor public discussions and events marking the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. But despite those efforts, the world has not forgotten. You go to the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, and here it is: Hong Kong remembers Tiananmen Square victims 30 years on. You go to the front page of the New York Times today with the picture of the crowds in the streets. A perilous anniversary. Thousands gathered Tuesday in Hong Kong on the 30th anniversary of the crackdown on Tiananmen Square in Beijing. You go to the Financial Times, front page picture, the candles lit and held. Hong Kong pays tribute to Tiananmen Square. So the world has not, nor will never forget. We will always remember. We've not forgotten the courage, the pain, the brutality of the government of China that it imposed. In fact, those who suffered and died, I think, inspired future generations to proudly demand freedom and democracy across the globe, which is why I'm happy that the three of you are here today speaking out. The United States has a long record of championing liberty and freedom around the globe. We must continue to support individuals who are demanding freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and the harassment, detention, and imprisonment of Chinese citizens exercising their rights continues today, and we will continue to speak out. So the question to the three of you is, what is the most effective approach in your minds for us to engage the government of China on human rights and fundamental freedoms?
Thank you, Senator, both for the lovely remembrance and the question. You know, this is not a time in history when the Chinese government is eager to have an honest conversation about human rights because it knows it hasn't got a good story to tell. And we're certainly aware that many governments, including the US, continue to try to have that conversation. But frankly, I think those discussions, veer on the perverse, if not the counterproductive, because often the Chinese government will take what is said to it by another government about human rights issues and twist it or misreport it. And I think that can be very discouraging for people across the country to see if, in fact, they're able to know about it at all. I think there's much to be said at this point in time for governments pursuing, for example, things like shadow human rights dialogues with independent activists. There are many people standing in Washington right now who would be incredible to have debates with about the trajectory for the rule of law in China, how to deal with certain kinds of social issues, how to deal with press freedom. And I think for governments to engage those people at a level and with a degree of recognition that might normally be reserved only for another government, I think does a couple of different things. First, it empowers that community and gives it the recognition it deserves. And I think arguably most important, it sends a message to Beijing that those aren't the only actors to have these conversations with.
Well, thank you. Anyone else want to add?
Yes. To answer the question of how to mostly empower the Chinese people and the fighting against the communist regime, let's learn from our enemy. President Xi Jinping, this February, had an important meeting to his cadre. It's about preventing potential risks, severe risks. And in that speech, some of them made public, he highlighted two things that he worried about as risks. One, internet. Two, youth. He is afraid that the new generation of Chinese youth are having different value systems that he would like these people have. he has his fears, but his fears should be our advantages. His dream of China dream, that empire dream, that repressing the Chinese people and putting surveillance cameras everywhere, that Chinese Communist Party can last for another 100 years, is a nightmare for the Chinese citizens. It's a nightmare for the entire world. Everybody values freedom. So go against that is the right way.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.